We are happy to announce that this episode of the SWW show is partially brought to you by Humble Bundle. Well, not really. We are part of the Humble Bundle referral program, and we just wanted to say that if you like really cheap games and maybe helping charity pending the Humble thing going on, all you have to do is go to humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. That's right, humblebundle.com/partner equals SWW. And you just do your normal stuff, and it just kind of helps us get a couple bucks here and there. Maybe it helps AJ get his lights, maybe it's Mike camera, maybe we actually pay Corey for helping us out. But again, if you're going to go buy games anyway, it might be worth checking out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to one of these interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today with me a special guest from the West, not that far away. So get us started, do you mind introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
Sure, my name is Tylan. I'm the solo dev making the game Pirates of Gravitae. It launched on Steam Early Access on March 31st, which was just last week. And it's a flight action roguelite game, which I guess most easily describe as Luftrausers meets Hades. And things are going well so far. And the plan is for the game to be in early access for a while, and hopefully in about a year, the final release would be upon us. And to tell you a bit more about the game, what you do in the game is essentially you're flying a pirate ship, which also happens to be a rocket ship, and you fight bad guys up in the air, and you deal with various flight conditions like storms and winds and day and night conditions, and your goal is to get to the end of the map. You fight one encounter at a time, and at the end of every encounter, as you defeat them in roguelite fashion, you are rewarded a bonus, and your choices along the way define what kind of build you're going for. And if you die anywhere in the game, it's not completely game over. You go back to the beginning. Some of the stuff you collected along the way gets lost, but there's some persistence as well. Like your stat upgrades, your ability unlocks, they remain with you. So that way, even if if you keep dying early on a lot, you're still making some progress, and eventually the game should get easier that way.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here. I think I want to start with kind of, as you said, this is this continuing evolution genre of a roguelike, right? Which I think fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, has really gone over a changing over the years and a redefinition of it. So to me, I think of the beginning of this genre and the way we think of it now, kind of like starting with Rogue Legacy, and then like over time kind of evolving. I know you kind of referenced Hades as like a good example too of like this tail end of this. When you think of these games, because when I think of them as like a game with a light level of progression, but a lot of times it's like a tighter lock of content, and the idea is you kind of iterate over this content over and over and over again. What is there anything that you feel like I'm missing, or anything else to you kind of when you're thinking of games like this kind of like stand out to you, kind of like when you're like, oh, this is a roguelike game? Like, what does that mean to like you in probably more definitive terms?
Right. To me, roguelite usually means that there is more than one path to success, and that early on failure is a given. You're going to die a lot. But eventually, you figure out things that work, things that don't work, and, you try to find interesting combinations. One of the, I think, best examples, one of my favorites is Slay the Spire. I don't know if you play that one, but it's a card game with roguelite progression, and you go through this dungeon, and every time, there's a series of encounters, and, you die a lot. But over time, you understand what things synergize well with each other. And, part of the joy in playing games like that is finding exactly what combos work really well together. trying to come up with game-breaking things. And sometimes your only chance of actually winning the game is coming up with one of those game-breaking things. So yeah, there's definitely a sense of discovery there, that you might otherwise not have in a more, straightforward, linear, gameplay.
So what I'm obviously going to jump into then is so what is it? So like when you talk about games kind of both like how they exist is one thing, but wanting to kind of make one of those systems I'm kind of curious about, because like in my head I've always like, this seems like really fun to make, but I've sat down and like tried to think about these systems and they feel really hard to balance and get right. Was that to you kind of the fun of thinking about kind of designing this game, or was there something like, was there like something like, hey, I feel roguelikes just aren't getting this thing right? Or I'm kind of curious like what made you want to dig into this?
I wouldn't necessarily call balancing difficult. I mean, and to be perfectly honest with you, in the current iteration, the game has been out for less than a week. And I'm watching other people play, and I'm realizing that maybe I made it a little bit too difficult, which I'm going to address soon. But overall, I think the appeal of designing a roguelite from a developer perspective is the game almost balances itself, because if you think of a more traditional linear progression, you go from one mission to the next, and you might get stuck somewhere along the way. Whereas with roguelites, because it's kind of given that you're going to die somewhere along the way, you don't necessarily have to make every single battle super well balanced. Like early ones could be too easy, and later on it could get a little bit more difficult. But because it's a, battle of attrition over a longer period of time, eventually you're going to hit an encounter that feels like, it's a life and death sort of situation. And for some people that might be the third encounter, or for some people that might be the, ninth encounter or whatever. But eventually you get there. So there's less of a pressure in getting every single encounter, balanced to the nines. Actually gives you more wiggle room there.
That's interesting. I've never thought of it as, from a designer's point of view, as inherently, but it makes sense. Kind of, it's a type of game that lets you kind of almost have more playroom of like, because it's always like that thing when you make a system or an encounter, you're always like, is it too hard, too easy? Where like a game like this, it's almost like just always make it a hair too hard and you're kind of like hoping over time a system kind of corrects itself. And obviously, if you're really off, you'll correct it manually. The other thing, obviously, is it's a pirate game. I feel like it's another genre that we've seen like a couple big games, but it's not this giant thing. Was there something just in pirates you thought intuitively like was just fun, or like why make it a pirate? Not just a pirate, like a flying pirate game. Like it's not like it's a very special, specific thing.
Yeah, well, it actually came about in a funny way. When I first started making this game, it had nothing to do with pirates. It was more like a Moonlander sort of game. And I was really making it just for my kids. They're 6 years old. They don't have a lot of exposure to games. So any kind of game is very novel to them. And, the idea of me making a game for them was really exciting for them. And over time, of course, they're watching me do these things. And they started coming up with ideas like, why don't you add this? Why don't you add that? And I started, entertaining some of their ideas. And one of the earliest things that came up was, can you make this a pirate ship? And at first I was like, whoa, wait, rocket ship and pirate ship. How would that, go along? And then I realized, Treasure Planet is a movie that exists. So took some cues from that in terms of how it might work. So over time they kept coming in with new things, new ideas. And I was working on another thing at the time. My full-time job was something different. And when I got laid off from that, I was thinking of, should I go back to another studio job or do something as an indie dev? And I realized, this thing that I have that I'm making for my kids actually could be quite interesting. And again, at the time I was playing a lot of Luftrausers and I could see the parallels in between. So, I decided to take a chance with that.
Nice. And I want to say immediately one of the things that stands out to me is I think you got, especially thinking of Luftrausers and kind of other games, like I feel like you really got that style, right, with this game. Also, Treasure Island's totally a thing that exists that I totally forgot exists. I want to point out because it's just not. Such an interesting poll to kind of look at and realize kind of that it's a thing.
Mhm.
Was that just like something that you just really enjoyed and you're like, I think there's something here I could use again? Or was it just kind of like one of those you're just thinking of pirates and it just popped up in your head?
Sorry, in terms of mixing pirates with rocket ships, or
Yeah, like obviously, like we said, Treasure Island, but like otherwise, like I can't really think of other massive
Right.
amounts of media that does that. Even though
Right,
on
right.
paper it makes a lot of sense from like what you think of pirates and like the fun of pirates, end quote.
Um, hmm. Well, the thing is, I think one thing that really sets it apart, aside from the wackiness of the theme outright, is the way you play the game. In most flight sims, and the same with Luftbrausers, you only shoot from the nose of your aircraft, which is fine. Like there's some cool strafing maneuvers in Luftbrausers. But also it kind of limits your maneuver options. In most flight sims, the most interesting thing you can do is just try to get behind somebody else. Like it just ends there, and lock onto them and you can shoot them down, sort of thing. When you introduce pirate ships to that mix, and now you have to think about your broadsides. You're not shooting straight ahead; you're shooting from the side of the ship, which opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of positioning and tactics. And, as a side interest, I've always kind of liked, naval combat games. I grew up playing Sid Meier's Pirates a lot. And, those games are fine, but I guess one thing that was lacking for me in naval combat was also the thrill of, really high-paced, fast-paced combat, because, ships are not every, ship is a motorboat, so they can only go so fast. So yeah, in that sense, it was an interesting prospect of mixing the two. Like, what if you had the strategic options, tactical options of a naval combat game, but it also played as fast as a dogfighting game. So that was definitely a draw.
Talk about that obviously because I think this game because you obviously there's the demo out and I had a key for the game and I think that's something that I think feels kind of right and it feels like what I would think it should feel like. Do you mind kind of talking about the process of getting that flying and like the act of combat while flying to kind of feel how like I don't know, it's this weird thing of like none of us have 99% of us have never like driven a pirate ship and none of us have driven a pirate ship in the air, but we all have like a guttural sense of what it should feel like. Like pirate ships is one of the things that I'm like, you just play a pirate game and you just know immediately, oh, this feels like a pirate ship, even though it feels nothing like a pirate ship. Mm-hmm. So what is like, how is that process of getting that right?
Yeah, well, that took some time. I mean, the first thing was, I guess, finding the right combination, right balance between a flight sim and an arcade game. I love both. I grew up playing both sides of the question. On the arcade side, easy controls, easy to grasp, and tight controls. The responsiveness of the controls, it's very important. And on the flight sim side, customizability and, as I said, like tactics, different maneuver options. So I spent a lot of time trying to find the right balance, and I hope I hit it. And some people might feel more at home with this game than others. But overall, my guiding principle was, I just wanted to feel like a pirate movie of sorts. Like I remember, you might have heard of this. Sid Meier, I think, was once asked how he came with the Pirates game. And his answer was that, they did their research not in the historical, Pirates section, history section of the library, but the kids' book section. Sometimes what it should feel like is more important than what it is. And in that sense, I kind of tried to aim for, how can I explain this? It almost feels like a sword fight in a pirate movie. It's a chaotic situation. People are coming at you from all angles, and you have your, trusted saber or, cutlass or whatever, and you try to maintain control of the situation. And of course, unexpected things happen. but overall, it's a thrill ride. There are ups and downs, and I try to maintain that as much as possible. In terms of not just the controls but also the camera angles, which was a bit of a risk factor because people are generally used to playing things from a fixed perspective, especially like Luftrausers is a 2D side view kind of game, whereas this is 2.5D, where the action takes place on a 2D plane, but the camera angles are dynamic. And the reason behind that was, I really wanted to convey the sense of, you're up there with that ship, you're swinging from a chandelier sort of feeling. And I hope I got the balance right. So far, I think people playing the game are pleasantly surprised that it works. Of course, the flip side of that is, the unpacking of the word surprise, because sometimes don't expect it to work as well. And it's something that I occasionally have challenges with. People looking at the game on Steam might not immediately, understand how it would all work together or whether it would work well together. Again, one of the reasons I have a free demo on Steam is exactly that.
It's always I have always been someone who I think Steam's refund policy might be a bit too generous, but demos are always that interesting kind of way to kind of counter that and stuff, and also, right. And especially your game's a little more procedural, so, like, that matters a bit less. Like, I was thinking of, like, you see those indie games that are like, oh, we have an hour content, but there's a 2-hour refund period on Steam, so it's always that weird balance. So I'm kind of curious, as we're talking, is, as you said, the game, like, just got an early access last week, like, Friday last week, if I did math right, or Thursday. So as you said, it sounds like at least the response to the game has at least been good. I'm assuming with any good game launch, it's been definitely stuff hit the fan. But at least it sounds like stuff's been good. So I'm kind of curious, is it kind of the response that you were expecting? Or is there kind of like your internal just guesses were way different than like how audiences responded to the game?
It's a bit of both, I guess. I originally actually first launched on itch.io back in November. It was more like an alpha and much more limited content. And throughout the development process, I was thinking, pirates and rocket ships, that's awesome. Like, how can anybody not think that that's awesome? But after that launch, I realized, well, wait a second, maybe people don't necessarily think that way. It didn't quite have the, splash that I was hoping for, to be honest with you. In retrospect, if Disney could have made Treasure Planet popular, maybe I didn't stand, too much of a chance either. So in that sense, the reaction has been, less exciting than I was hoping for. But I mean, part of that is also the fact that I am a solo dev, so I can only make the game or promote the game, and I cannot be in two places at once. And I didn't really give myself enough time to go all out with promotion. So those things are all playing a role. But I'm hoping the process of early access itself and the fact that it's now out there and people can try it will help people better understand what the game is and what they can expect from it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and it's always the fun struggle of being a solo dev, even like a small team dev, and you're like, okay, we have a week or two to launch, you're like, we need to some level promote the game, but we also need to finish the game, and always the joke is that either promotion gets secondary and you have trouble selling it, or finishing the game goes second and you have trouble actually releasing a product that's not broken. But it's funny because you have now that weird thing of like a product that's at least stable, and like I think it's not like there's probably some little balance if you want to fix and add to over time, but at least like you have a thing that if you went to go promote it now, like it won't, like it's still there.
Yeah.
I'm curious, kind of as we kind of talk about this now that you're in early access and obviously you want more sales, and you're gonna be in for a while as you said while you're working on the product. Is there kind of big things that people can expect over the next couple of months kind of in the game, or you're still kind of like figuring out kind of your choices kind of post this initial launch?
I've been gathering feedback and, watching people play the game on, YouTube and Twitch, which is really invaluable, because, not everybody plays the game the way I play the game. So it's been really illuminating in that sense. So there are a few things that I will be adding and tweaking, like quality of life changes here and there, at least, initially. And over time, the goal is definitely to add more content. Like right now, there is only one act in terms of storytelling, and I'm planning to have 3 in the end. So that means, more enemy types, maybe more mission types, different bonuses that you can collect, and all those things. And of course, there are other things like adding achievements or control support or localizations and all that. But those things also depend on, again, user feedback, and how much of a demand there is in terms of choosing what to prioritize first. But yeah, the initial plan is to start with just making sure the existing experience is really solid. People are not getting stuck anywhere. There are no bugs. I haven't seen any bug reports so far, so that's great. And then after that, the next phase is expanding on the content.
I want to point out, though, getting a game out with no bug reports is pretty impressive, because that's, never been true ever. It's always one of those, you're always this game's perfectly fine. You launch it, and I just look at Discord and go, oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, there are some, occasionally people say, oh, it's a little bit stuttering here and there in terms of performance. But, it's also kind of hard to know, especially with streamers. They have really complicated setups in terms of, streaming their desktop with, GPU and CPU used simultaneously with background removal and all that. So it's hard to know sometimes what is, due to the setup and what's due to the game. But yeah, there are some performance things that I can definitely work on. But yeah, so far I haven't ever seen anybody completely crashing out of the game or unable to progress or anything like that. And I made sure that wouldn't happen. But of course, things could have slipped through the cracks. But yeah, no, thankfully that doesn't seem to be the case here.
No, that is impressive. And yeah, always that streaming. It's just anytime with bugs, especially because there's such a wide range of machines. I work in a game, and one of the things we had is we had someone using a curved monitor, and we kept being what are these UI bugs? And he goes, why use a curved monitor? I'm like, and you didn't think I was telling us that one anywhere in this bug report? You're the first player we've had with a curved monitor. And most AAA games don't support curved monitor. Why did you think it was someone with a curved monitor?
Yeah. Well, one thing I came across was actually somebody playing the game on a 4K monitor, and I realized that some things were not scaling properly in the UI, and they were kind of tiny. But luckily, they didn't see that as a bug. They just thought it was designed tiny. So I got away with that. But, it's all fixed now, so it should be fine on any kind of monitor.
No, that is. There are always those fun bugs of and somewhat valid, right? So to our solution, they always to just kind of go in and kind of basically force their monitor kind of correct resolution and stuff. But yeah, it's always that fun of I wish people who played games and then reported bugs understood that hey, if you're running something super unique, point that out somewhere, just anywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe it could still be valid of oh, it's 4K, so now it's you just have some sort of line of code in there to account for that. But unless you run into these semi not common things.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And there's something to be said about Steam in that sense. The Steam hardware survey is really invaluable because, it gives you a breakdown of, what are the most popular, aspect ratios, what kind of hardware, is the most common. So, you don't have to worry about, scaling your UI for portrait mode or something like that.
Yeah, no, that is very, very invaluable. But yeah, so yeah, as we said, the game we were talking about was Pirates of Gravitae. Gravitae. If I could only speak, it would be great. I'm curious, kind of, as we get to the tail end of this discussion, is there anything that you would like to tell people they should know, kind of, if they are interested in checking out the game?
I would tell them that I know about the difficulty and I will be addressing it soon. It's a little bit brutal right now. I mean, people are still having fun, mind you. I mean, they're saying, it was very difficult. I had fun, but it was very difficult. So I'll be addressing that as soon as possible. And aside from that, no, I think, it takes maybe a little bit of time getting used to the, 2D and 3D mix. But again, if they have any questions, they can always just try the demo and, find out for themselves if it suits them or not.
Perfect. So yeah, as we said, game is Pirates of Gravitae. It is available on Steam in early access form for in the US for $9.99. It's currently on sale right now for that good old launch window. You have a free demo for people who want to go check it out. It looks like you have a Discord server for people who have questions or anything like that. And I'm assuming that's basically where we should be sending people to go talk about the game.
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, they can find me on Discord, or they can send me an email, through the Steam contact information site section, and I'll do my best to get back to you.
Perfect. Well, I want to say thank you again for taking time out of your day to talk to me about the game, and best of luck as you do continuous development on this project.
No, thank you for having me.
The SWW Show and all of its affiliate podcasts are podcast by me, Mike Maroney, and AJ Losi, sometimes by our contributors, including Corey King. You can follow the SWW Show on social media at the SWW Show, or sooner or later you go to patreon.com/SWW to help us out. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.